There's a problem with the gender pay gap. Did you know that the highest paid female model makes 95% more than the highest paid male model? That's terrible. Equality! Equality for men!
Hello and welcome to the show. Colourful conversations with clergyman Pete and businessman Mark. This week we debate the gender pay gap issue. Well, as we've seen in the media, the gender pay gap figures disclosed by a lot of the UK's biggest companies have shown a vast majority of them pay men more than women. However, about 13% pay women more than the average man. Remarkable. And yet, of course, this particular story is ongoing. It does seem that those companies, particularly those who employ 250 employees or more in the United Kingdom alone, have started to report where the issues are in gender pay gaps. Yeah. Now, is this something that is actually just taken out of proportion? Are we actually now vilifying companies due to perhaps values that we hold today, when in actual fact we should be looking at the much bigger picture? So, Clergyman Pete, I'd just like to ask you about your thoughts about the gender pay gap issue, and what do you think about how you're being compensated by the Church of England?
Yes. Well, I, of course, pay by the Church of England, taking aside, the huge amounts of money that we make on the Mark and Pete show.
Yes.
The money that I'm paid as a clergyman would be the same if I were a clergywoman. So in that way, there's gender pay equality in the Church of England. But in other industries, of course, there is inequality in the amounts that the people are paid. We were joking at the start of the show, pointing out that female models get paid a lot more. And although it was a jokey introduction, there is an element of truth, as there always is in the best joke, isn't there, Mark?
Absolutely.
That in fact, there's sometimes a reason for the difference in the pay gap. In that an attractive woman as a model will make a lot more money for their employer than an attractive man. Does that make it right? Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that that's the reality of the situation. So I think that there are reasons for the gender pay gap that aren't down to simple, prejudice, as in someone thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to employ a woman to do that because that's not what women do." Or, of course, there is the alternative: I'm not going to pay a man to do that. Why would I pay him? He shouldn't be doing that sort of job. I'm thinking, for example, of nursing, where there are very few men. There's not the gender pay gap. I don't think you can boil it down to simple prejudice like that. It is to do with the differences between men and women, and they are paid different amounts. But that doesn't necessarily mean that there's any bigotry or sexism going on. It may be for other reasons. There are possibilities and other reasons for the difference in the pay gap. And even if there's a pay gap, if it's for perfectly good reasons, why should we be doing anything about it? So my question really is, my answer to your question is a question, which is, do we really need to do anything about it? Is it really a problem?
I think we do, and I'm going to sort of come from it from a business perspective. But it's interesting, I'm going to pick on one point you mentioned about attractiveness, which of course I know in your particular case is one of the reasons why you'll be going to your employers asking for a pay rise.
Yes, absolutely.
However, the bit that I do have an issue with is this point about this quest to have parity. I agree that it is right that if you're doing the same job, person A does the same job as person B. But I do have some issues here where actually I think it's eliminating some of the softer values that an individual can bring to a given role. Now, interestingly enough, there are a lot of women who listen to the show who certainly have a bit of a grievance here. They have highlighted the point here that actually this initiative, this gender pay gap issue, is actually a good thing. I mean, we've seen in the media recently, such as, ironically, the BBC, where many female reporters have gone out on strike and actually made a big issue of the fact that some of their colleagues are paid considerably more money. And in fact, we actually had a letter from one of our listeners. So I thought, Clergyman Pete, I'd just read it out, and this might sort of get a sense of a sentiment. And it was entitled, Pay Attention. Dear men, curse, curse, it's getting worse. The gender pay gaps hit my purse. Wages now skyrocket, but I seem to have an empty pocket. Ladies, defend our salaries. Put all men into rogues' galleries. Strangle, male working collars. Why should they have all the dollars? Earnings, I now want my share. I'll squeeze their packets until it's fair. Figures, look at my figure. The working man's is getting bigger. This sexist system is a sorry sign. Oh, how it's pinched my bottom line. Change! Well, there isn't any. I'll be forever known as poor old Penny. Well, Penny, I know that perhaps you do have a case, but I would like to bring something else to the equation here, Penny, and that is this, that going back to my scenario of people who are being paid for the same job. So, Clergyman Pete, I want to sort of get your thoughts on this, that this idea of paying people the same amount of salary or wage, however you want to describe it, I think it's a good thing, but are we not eliminating something which actually is added value? Here's a scenario. Let's say that we have an accountant, and it's a job, and there's more than one accountant in the company. And we're going to call person A and person B. Now, person A is at the age of 25. Person B is at the age of 45. Now, in theory, if they're doing exactly the same job, you'd expect them to be paid the same. However, this is where I think that we need to use a little bit of common sense. What happens if, say, for example, if person B has more qualifications? Simply again, experience. Surely we should be rewarding people for their experience and they can bring that added value. Possibly person B could have more training and skills as a result. And of course, the other thing is those added value services. What happens if person B could, say, for example, speak another language, which might help companies to interact and trade with people internationally? And loyalty. And I think that there's a value for this. Now, this is a soft factor, but I think that anyone who runs a company will certainly want good employees to stay with them. Surely that should be rewarded in some way. And the other one is performance. So let's say, for example, that person A, at the age of 25, is not doing anywhere near as an efficient job as person B. Surely we should be rewarding people for their capability. Now, I just want to get your thoughts on this, because I do agree that we need parity, but is it not necessary? Isn't it sometimes there is a danger we're neutralising all of these other important factors?
Yes, I mean, I think that there is a very big danger if you're simply looking at the final outcome. You know, what is the salary on each gender, and you're not looking at these other factors. The example you gave of the did you say 45 and 25? Well, the different ages. Now, of course, you do expect someone to be paid more with greater experience, and the person who's older almost certainly has more experience. You don't know that because they could have just been employed, but they may well have far more experience. Now, that carries over, that very same concept can be carried over to the difference between male and female.
Well, you may have noticed that I deliberately didn't tell you whether A or B was male or female.
Yes.
Because you could do two versions of the scenario, but I deliberately tried to neutralise it to sort of give this point across about the added value.
Yes, but the thing is that if they've both been the same age, if they are both 45, let's say that, but one's man, one's woman, there's a high likelihood, I mean, it doesn't have to be the case, but there's a high likelihood that
it could be the same situation.
The woman has less experience.
Exactly.
Because she's taken time out to have babies.
Yes.
Now, having babies is not a bad thing. It's a good thing to do. It's, to me, as you know, I'm a man, to me, having babies, this ability that women have, is like some sort of superpower. They're like real life superheroes. They can do this incredible thing the men can't do. But it does mean they have less experience in the job. So therefore, often they are paid less, and it makes sense because think about the other way around. If you gain experience and don't get extra pay for it, what does that say? That
Well,
isn't
indeed.
fair, is it? So you're making it more unfair for individuals by just worrying about this one figure. We need to have the same salary pay between men and women doing the same job. What if they have more experience? What if they're doing the job better because of that? This is I think, one of those cases where, and this is often something that's missing from public debate. We need a bit of intelligence and sophistication in talking.
Now
about
there you
things,
go.
and not simply jump on a high horse. And so I think all these the latest initiatives, the idea of changing the laws so that the paying of an unequal salary is a separate illegal thing. It's already illegal to discriminate against someone based on their gender. That's already illegal. So I don't think that there's a need for another law. I think, as you said earlier, like this can be the mark and Pete position. I think that it is a good idea to provide training and provide encouragement for, say, women to take on professions when they haven't traditionally been well represented. That's fine.
This is a good point. Because I wanted to ask
go
you a question here, particularly on sectors, because there are many sectors, but recently what has been highlighted is certain industries that pay men more. Now, I'm going to ask you, Clergyman Pete, which sector do you think currently pays men more than women than any other particular industry? So just have a guess.
Well, I'm going to guess here that it's not the sex industry. The first one, so I'm cutting that one out.
I don't think it's on the list, but it's only very minor.
Okay, but I think that I'm gonna say the biggest difference is in journalism.
No, it's not.
It's in
actually,
media.
It's finance and insurance.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. Now it's very male dominated. Now I know that this is changing all the time, year on year and year. It's certainly getting closer, but at the moment, outstandingly, finance and insurance pays men more than they do women.
Yes.
Now, just to give you a sort of a context as we sort of scale down the list, that electricity and gas, big industry, very important. They sadly are currently paying men more. And again, manufacturing. Now, I want to mention here that we're judging people, of course, on today's value, but manufacturing, we can't really criticise manufacturers, surely, because, I mean, they've had very little choice. Women, decades ago, and in fact, even 100 years ago, probably didn't have many women coming into the industry. So, what were they meant to do? Not trade because they couldn't have enough women in place? But, of course, obviously the game is changing, but it takes time.
Yes.
So should we really be vilifying manufacturing or other areas of industry? I don't really think. I'm trying to get a sense of what this initiative is trying to do here.
What I think is that it's got a mistaken aim. As I say, I think the aim should be that you try and get the maximum number, for example, of women in a particular field that want to do it and they're capable of doing it. And you should provide training for people, especially women in this case, of how to progress through their field, how to bargain, how to negotiate for a higher salary. This could be the sort of thing that could be provided, because you don't really want people missing out simply because they're not pushy enough, which is quite often the case with women. One of the things that might make them good at a certain job, say for example they're very good in the medical profession, because of their compassionate nature. Generally, women are more compassionate than men, generally speaking. So they're going to do very well, but they may not get the highest paid jobs or get in that plum job in the top hospital because they're not pushy enough. So training in that area can help. It's been shown to be helped. There's been studies that have shown that with the right level of training and how to put yourself across, being assertive in the way that you present yourself can help. So those sort of things good. But the aim should be then the maximum possible number. Well, we don't know what that number is because, as you say, of the historical low levels of women in certain professions. So don't aim for parity. You don't know what the level should be yet. So you can't have an aim. That's just ridiculous. It can't be that there's an equal number of men and women, because men and women, and this may come a shock to people who have been paying too much attention to the mainstream media. Men and women are different, and although you would have thought it was obvious from the physical differences that there would be other differences. They're different mentally, they're different in character, personality, as well as physical strength, etc., which makes a difference in what jobs you would take on. There are far more men in sewage work and sewage treatment work, and there are far more women who are nurses, for example, to take two.
Well, this is true, and I think the one thing to mention about certain industries, say for example manufacturing, or say the IT technology industry, which traditionally has been very male dominated, but of course it's changing, because at school, what with certainly with science and with mathematics and computer technology, etc., men or boys and girls are equally encouraged to come through. And I think what we will see, certainly over the next 5 to 10 years, is more women coming through into the industry. And I think that will be, again, an encouraging sign, so that effectively, companies can take advantage of those skills. And more importantly, looking at the other way around, is that women can actually develop a career and have wider range of opportunities to get into senior level roles, because they will be equipped with the right skills. Because currently, one of the things that I've seen, certainly in the technology industry, is there haven't been enough women who have trained in the right areas. Yes. So there are women coming into the profession, but the one acknowledgement that they have cited is the qualifications. And that, I think, is going to be addressed. Now, I did want to ask you a question, Clergyman Pete, about, we've been talking about the United Kingdom, but I wonder how this compares to other countries.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the median gender pay gap, so if you look at the highest possible salary to the lowest, and then you look at the median, the bit in the middle, where do you think the United Kingdom comes? So I'm going to ask you, which country do you think has the biggest median gender pay gap in the world?
Saudi Arabia.
No.
Oh. China.
No.
Was I close with either?
Well, actually, ironically, you're sort of heading here. You needed to go a little bit further, particularly with recent times. Korea.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and then you have Estonia, Japan. Oh dear, Japan, what's happening there? I'm surprised.
Yes.
Actually, United States is not that far away from where the United Kingdom is at the moment. No. But it's interesting, isn't it, that we sort of fit around sort of a mid-table list. Yes. Now, interesting, I'm also going to cite a number of companies here. Now, this is on the other side of the story, which is... isn't this right? Boots, Shell International, Ocado, Pizza Express, the Highways England organisation, Adobe, the software company. You're actually paying women more than you are men.
Yes, yeah. Well, you see, this is interesting.
What's going on there?
There's been interesting statistics which has been shown in both Britain and America that young women, we're talking about women in their 20s, who are professionals, so having a salary rather than a wage,
yes,
who live in cities, get consistently paid more than men. Now, people don't know why. There's a possibility that young women will tend to be paid more by their male bosses. I'm not reading. I don't know if that's true. That's one theory that's been put forward. But whatever the reason, it's a real statistic. I noticed that there have been no attempts to put in place measures to redress that balance and make sure that young men who work in the professions in cities get paid more. It's just so unfair. What I think is that it isn't unfair. As I was trying to say earlier, I think the unfairness comes the other way. We should stop this insistence that people get paid the same salary, or the gender pay gap isn't the issue. What it is, it should be the same pay for the same work and experience and qualifications. Whatever your gender, whatever your race, it's really a proper application of the current law, which is anti-discrimination. I think that if that is correctly applied, it's not that there's no issue, as you've just highlighted. There may be issues the other way, but the men be paying more. I don't know, but that shouldn't be what you're testing. What you should be testing is Are people correctly identifying who are the best candidates for the job, and then
Yes.
deciding on their pay accordingly? I think that you should try and make what gender they are irrelevant, unless it's relevant, of course, to the job. And I think that there are jobs where that's relevant. For example, take a midwife, for example. Now, some men make very good midwives,
Yes.
but in general, women make better midwives. So it would make sense to try and recruit them. Would it make sense to try and recruit more men to try and get the equality there? No, it wouldn't. And if women have, if a man and a woman have the same experience and are as good at the job, they should be paid the same amount, of course. But you shouldn't be trying to get as many men there, and you shouldn't be trying to get all the men being paid the same as the women. You should instead be you want the maximum of men who want to and can do it in there, and then by the way you advertise, the way you train, and then while you adjust to the pay depending on the experience, qualifications, etc. But there is something else I wanted to bring up, Emma, which I guess we're coming to a close of this show.
Yes.
But I just wanted to mention another issue that this highlights, and that is the change in the way that society is structured.
Yes.
Over the past century, I guess it's been gradually changing. Right? It used to be the case that you would expect something. So most women would be married, stay at home with the children during their younger years, and their job would be really managing the household, and then other jobs. They may have what we would call now a side hustle. They might do some cleaning, or they may, if they have professional training, they may do some. I don't know, those scientists, they might well go into that, but they would go in at a lower level because in terms of pay, because they'd taken time out to have their children. Now that was expected and it was okay because they were the second income in the home. So then you encouraged them to pay the men more because they were expected to be the breadwinner. Now this has hung over till today. In that until quite recently, it was really expected that younger people would be paid less than older people. And there is an element of that remains to this day, in that below a certain age, the minimum wage is lower. And those are vestiges of the old way of thinking, which is a good way of thinking, if society is structured in that old way. So I was just really pointing out that it's not that in the past people were bigoted and now we're getting better. It's that in the past, society was structured in a different way. We've now changed. Now, that begs the question, has it been a good change? But that's maybe a topic for another show. I'm just highlighting the fact that it has changed. And so expecting companies to change round to this new order of things, the way that you respond to this new workforce and treat everyone equally, will take time. And you shouldn't punish companies and whole sectors because they haven't got the right number of men and women paid the right amount.
Indeed.
Suddenly that you've decided. You should instead make sure that everyone is paid fairly.
Indeed. Well, yes, society is changing dramatically. But listeners, what do you think about this? Have you got a particular viewpoint on what you're seeing happening in society? Maybe you think that it's going in the right way. Maybe you've got a different viewpoint. Why not log on to www.markandp.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, thank you for joining the show. But Clergyman Pete, I did have one last point to highlight. There are no women on the show. Oh dear.
Well, one of us could have a sex change.
Oh, that's what again? Toodle pip.